Welcome to All the Things, the unscripted podcast where we talk to intriguing people from a variety of cultures, backgrounds, and career paths and deconstruct who they are and why they think the way that they do. We dig deep and ask unexpected questions to learn about all the things, from faith and current events to relationships and mental health. We want to satisfy your craving for knowledge, true connection, and real conversation. This is Lenya Heitzig and Lindsey Maestas.
All the things.
Welcome back to the All the Things podcast. This is Lindsey Maestas, and I'm here, of course, with Lenya Heitzig.
Good morning. Oh, wait. It could be any time of day.
It's morning for us, and that's okay.
And it's really nice. I'm having a good morning. So.
Good. Yes. It's been a good day. And we are here with our lovely guest, Shealeen Bishop. And she is here to talk with us today about all of the things. So, Shealeen, give us a little introduction of yourself. You were in a band called Poema. How long have you lived in Albuquerque? What's your story?
Okay. Well, yes, I am Shealeen, born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And yeah, my sister and I, actually being in this studio is very nostalgic for me because we used to come in here and play back in the day.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. But my sister and I started a band when we were about 15 and 17. And so writing just some kind of sweet, sappy love songs as young.
But I went to the state fair. I remember you guys were in the little...
goodness. I remember.
What, band shelter or something?
I remember you being there. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Lindy's here. I remember seeing, when I was first saved, I remember seeing some of your album cover art and thinking, oh my gosh, they're the coolest girls in the world.
So
when
funny.
I grow up, I'm going to be...
Yes.
That is so funny. Yeah, it was fun. It was really, really fun. We came from a very creative family, musical family. Our dad kind of set us all up as a band when we were in middle school or even younger. My brother was probably 5 years old playing drums. He could barely reach the cymbals. But yeah, so it felt very natural. And so around probably 2008, we got signed to a label out in Seattle and kind of started from there. We just started traveling all over the country and putting out more albums. And so we had that band Poema for about 8 years.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because if there are people who aspire to this, because, my brother was always going to be a rock and roll star. And so there are people out there that are like, oh my gosh, they got signed and they were traveling us. Tell us really what traveling was like.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I will say I romanticize the idea of touring.
Yes.
Like we all do. It sounds so magical, right? I didn't like it. Traveling is fun when you've got controlled settings and you got a nice hotel and you got
Cozy
your coffee
bed.
shops to go. You're right.
Yeah.
It's fun when you're going to a place, but city after city is grueling.
Yes.
It's super grueling. And I remember even at my early 20s, I was like, man, I just want a dog and I just want a consistent routine and I want to be able to make coffee in the morning.
Some normalcy.
Yeah, I wanted some normalcy. And so, yeah, it wasn't
It's
as dreamy.
demanding, and it's
very
not
demanding.
it's not
it's
as
demanding. And it's also when you are traveling, sharing your music, your passion, your art with the world, and there's going to be times when it's really discouraging when you're playing to 5 people. And so it can be very humbling and kind of a bit of an emotional roller coaster, especially for young girls who, I don't know how secure I was and who I was at that point in life. And so I put a lot of stock in whether people came to our shows, how people reacted, how I performed. So it was a very learning experience.
The art turns into a product.
Yeah.
And you're originally this art, you're this
so
thing.
pure.
And then all of a sudden, if you're a product and people aren't buying the product, but the art's still art, right? And so it gets real complicated.
Oh, Lenya. I know.
There's where
it's hard.
it is. You're still probably living that with your other art.
I know.
Well, how did that work? How did that feel for you? Just to elaborate a little bit more, with being so young, having just this new experience, it's so exciting, right? You get a record label. Oh my gosh, that's our dream. And then you're going and these shows, maybe somebody doesn't respond well. How did that internally impact you? How did you process through those things?
Crying? No, I don't know. As a kid, I do have a lot of memories of crying. I think it kind of makes you kind of dig deeper and just like realize like what really matters in life. And it forced me to ask myself a lot of hard questions and really figure out what my priorities, I guess, were. It was such a journey, you guys. It was probably up till, so we stopped doing our band when I was 26, so 2006. And I remember that being such a pivotal moment because our band was actually doing better than it ever had been. And sorry, not 2006, 2016. Oh. That was when I was 26. Okay. So it was 8 years, 2008 to 2016. And I remember, like I said, our band was doing really great. We were getting these opportunities that were really amazing. But at the same time, I had this very strong prompting that the season was over. And it was, I don't think I've ever experienced quite a fork in the road like that, where like my flesh and my spirit were at war. I just wanted these shiny things that sounded like great opportunities. This had been a dream for so many years. But at the same time, I felt like kind of this prompting to surrender it. And it was very hard, very formative experience in my life, letting it all go.
How did your sister respond?
So
did she feel the same?
She did, in her own way. It was very different. We had both different reasons and we were in different places in our lives. And I think it was, the band was making us it was putting us at odds with each other.
Right.
We were just sisters, but we had a business together. We had a shared job, a shared life. All of our friends were the same. We even shared a car. And so it was a lot of pressure for a sister relationship. Yeah. And so I think we were both just finding that it was kind of a drag to practice. Like we were just not really finding as much joy in it anymore.
I want to talk about that a little bit too, only because I have a bird's eye view. I'm older than y'all.
Yeah.
So, as you raise kids and you have a vision, and I've seen this common in lots of families, even friends of yours, as sisters, it sounds like you were pretty symbiotic for a while.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? You were completely intermeshed with all the same. And you do hit this age where you need to individuate.
Yes.
You need to be who you are, and she needs to be who she is. And it doesn't mean either of you are bad. It's just that this thing that has been the duet now can't sustain who you really need to grow into and be on your own.
100%.
And my sister and I, we were like that, really, really tight. And for us, divorce kind of threw us together even tighter. And same thing, same friends, same everything. And then in college, it was just like... We just went these different ways. And there wasn't, any drama that caused it. It's just we were becoming who we were.
You needed to get
and my
away.
sister was very much more artistic. She wrote poetry and short stories. And, she was an English lit major. And I was fashion merchandising.
Yeah.
And so I was always go, go, go. She was at home reading and I'm out living the world,
Yeah. That's so funny. My sister and I have one sister, and we were so different growing up that I was preppy Abercrombie and Fitch blonde, and she went the opposite way and just
emo.
Black hair, gothic, like spiked collar necklaces.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was so, and it's funny because it's just so not her personality, but there was just that sense for her at the time of rebellion, and she really didn't like who I was at all and what I stood for at the time, which wasn't much. Honestly, at all.
Pretty thin layer. It's a pretty thin layer.
It's pretty surface level.
It represents some crazy things.
Yeah, and she just didn't want to be a part of any of the kind of the culture that had been created at our high school, which was very shallow, and which I now looking back respect her so much for that, because of course it set her apart from a lot of people. But now as we've grown and matured and both kind of come into our own, our relationship now is so strong where I'm like, oh gosh, I feel like I kind of missed out on that. But it seems like you have to come to a point at some point in your life where you have that sort of separation with a sibling until you realize, okay, this is where we need to be.
So let's just say it's very natural
to
grow apart in the sense that you have to individuate, is the way I
Right.
put it. You have to become the individual that you were meant to be. And,
Yeah, that's
and
good.
so
Yes.
that's not wrong. If anybody out there is like, I used to be so tight and now it just
Yeah.
feels so different. It's not bad. Just give the people room to grow and become, and it'll all come back together. I don't know. That
That's
sounds like
great.
such a
No, I think- no, it's
psychologist.
good.
or
That's
something.
good wisdom.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, especially when you're kind of in the midst of it. It can feel very disrupting and upsetting to have that relationship change. But yeah, I remember though the next morning I remember there was like a final conversation kind of where we were just like, okay, we're gonna take a break from this. And, it was late at night, very upset, But I remember I woke up the next morning and I remember I just was like, I feel like I'm free to pursue the things I really want to pursue that I'd kind of been lying to myself about, that, because when you're in a band together, you're doing something together, you're just going to keep doing the thing. You don't really question whether it's what your passion is. And so once I felt like I was an individual, I felt like that freedom to really start to explore what my passions were.
And is that the art that started coming out?
It was literally the next day. Like I remember the next day I was like,
wow.
all right, I'm gonna do this.
That's
Now
so
they
amazing.
lived in Nashville at
yeah.
the time, and I'm following from afar
Yeah.
because I follow all the kids of my
Yeah.
friends, and so I see you start doing this
Yeah.
art and watching you.
You're like, that's different.
Yes, you're like, where did that come from?
Right? I know. I'd always been music was the focus. But yeah, behind the scenes, like every single time I was watching a movie or just had a little bit of free time, I'd be like, let's just paint some flowers.
And it's not just painting some flowers. She is phenomenal. I told her as we were walking in here that I have one of her pieces in my house, and it's this beautiful cactus. And I was getting my hair done at the shop where it was for sale, and I stared at it almost the entire time. I was like, I absolutely have to have that. I don't even care how much it
thank
is. I just want it in my house. But your talent is real. And if you see her Instagram page, which we'll link all of this in the show notes, but when you see Shealeen's Instagram page, it's just so beautiful. Shealeen.
Largely
Thank you.
watercolor, right? Is
Yeah.
that your medium?
Watercolor.
So
talk a little bit about what drives you, what motivates you, and then you also started YouTube and teaching. And so just talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah. Well, for me, painting, it's always been, well, art in general, creativity, it's always been a natural, there's been a natural draw for me. So I was very young, both grandparents on both sides of my parents' families. They were both artists. And so it was kind of demonstrated for me very young. But it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I realized how healing and therapeutic and calming and just how much peace it actually gave me, how I was able to process some of the most difficult things I'd been handed in life as I was painting.
it's beautiful.
And I was able to kind of, I always think about it as I was able to like untangle knots as I'm painting, as I'm bringing something else to life. I'm like working through just pain and uncertainties in my mind. And so it's been such a place of calm and peace for me. And I think that was probably very foundational to why it's such a huge part of my life now. I guess continuing though, I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship, which doesn't sound like it's as peaceful as what I was just describing, but I love it. I love working for myself. I love strategizing and coming up with business ideas. It's so much fun to me. I was just in the coffee shop talking to another girl about art, and I was just going into full on nerd mode, talking about all the different like things you can try and different strategies as creatives and entrepreneurs. So that's definitely a huge passion for me as well.
So again, I'm going to dive out because I'm observing generationally. What you guys have been afforded to do is to pursue your passion, and your passion became your business. And for so many of us, we pursued a career.
Yeah.
And you guys
That's what you were
pursue,
told to
Yeah,
pursue.
you pursue passion. So your passion, Lindsey, you were journalistic and writing and, communicating. And here you've turned that into Living Easy, your podcast. And that has become an income source. People called these side hustles before, but what you guys are doing really aren't side hustles anymore.
90-hour week job.
Your side
main hustle.
hustles
Yeah.
have become your career path. And
Yeah.
I hate even putting it in that box because I
Our
think
vocation.
Yes,
Yeah.
there you go. Your
I like
whole
that one.
generation was about breaking that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then so for you to pursue art, it's really neat that women could break the glass ceiling, so to speak, and create their passion into something that was a side hustle that became
Yeah.
an income. And you
Yes.
are really in your joy zones. And I think you should speak to other women out there
Yeah.
about it's not wrong to pursue your passions and watch what God can do. You know, when I coming up, when I was in your age range, it was scorned upon to have a job. It was scorned upon. You know, we were
Oh,
all
wow.
supposed to be working at home, barefoot and pregnant. I mean, I don't
I
mean to
remember
put it that.
In one of Lenya's episodes, the pastor's wife, she says there was a moment where you were at a pastor's wife's conference and they asked you, who here works? And you were the only
Oh,
one
no.
to raise your hand and everyone had eyes on her.
it was like,
it's so
okay,
wow.
different.
That it was a standout for my generation. And now it's become a normal thing. So speak to the girls, the ladies out there, and tell them, pursue your passion. I mean, what would you say to people that, you know, are
Yeah.
behind you? A 16-year-old or 20-year-old who's thinking, can I really do this?
I'm seriously I'm so passionate about this. I remember one time when I was first starting to just kind of investigate what could I do this for a career. I remember I started listening to podcasts of different creatives and artists and entrepreneurs. And I remember listening to this one girl who she was an artist and she was like, man, I don't know. Sometimes it's so hard that I would just almost tell you to keep it as a hobby. And I remember in my spirit, I was like, no, like if you have a passion and you have an opportunity in this day and age with the internet, with just, I mean, it's never been more easy to connect with, for me, you know, collectors or for clients or people who are interested in learning from me. It's never been easier to connect with those people. And it almost just seems such a shame. I think about women like 100 years ago, a woman who would have loved to be a painter or a writer who did not have that opportunity. And it almost just seems so wrong to not pursue
It stayed
it.
contained. Like
Yeah.
maybe we go back to Mennonites or whatever, and they made these beautiful quilts.
Yeah.
And little did they know that it's an art form now. People collect these things, you know,
Yeah.
and put them in museums, and and it's a shame that, you know, they weren't able to expand and build on that. And you think of the Proverbs 31 woman. Her
Yeah.
hand was to the distaff and the spindle.
So
and she
long ago,
saw
too.
build
Yeah.
and she bought it. And, you know, she was bringing in an income and wasn't afraid of the winter because her household was cared for. And for some reason, there was this season of that seemed wrong or naughty for a Christian woman to do that. So here's the Proverbs 31, and
She's the example.
She was an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
she sold linen and purple, man. That girl was weaving.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I had this generation that was oppressive, honestly. And now I get to see you guys soar.
Well, and I feel the same, Shealeen. You mentioned Living Easy. I launched an episode today, just a surprise episode on this. And I
wow.
titled it, She Didn't Do It Better, She Just Did It. Because I think so many people look at successful entrepreneurs and think, oh, she just did it better. Like she
Yeah.
just knows what she's doing, but so much of it is just taking the risk. And
Yep.
it's knowing that the first 15 times you could fail. And I've shared that there are countless moments and things that I've tried that did not go the way I hoped they
Yeah.
would, and that ended abruptly or that just didn't take off in the way I hoped they would. But I'm going to keep trying because my biggest fear, and I don't ever want to not use the giftings and the passions that God has given me, because they create so much opportunity for conversation about Him that it really allows for me to feel purpose,
Yeah.
I think, and for other women to feel purpose. And I was sitting with a friend at coffee recently, and we both were agreeing that one of our biggest fears is in 15 years saying, oh yeah, that's something I always wanted to do, but I never
Yeah.
did it.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
terrifies
Same.
me. I just don't want to. And so I'm always encouraging women, you will never, ever succeed if you don't try. And if you try, you may fail, but you also might succeed. There's a 0% chance though, if you don't at least try it. And
Good.
for me, it's like, gosh, God has given us such unique talents. We did a whole series, if you all haven't heard it, on spiritual gifts, and just hearing the different giftings that the Lord provides. We're so unique and we have different talents. And so, yes, something may have been done before. Yes, you may have seen it a million times. There are plenty of YouTube videos teaching people how to paint. But what Shealeen offers is unique because of the gifting that God has given her and her unique talent. And so, but she did it anyway. She did it anyway, even though you could find another YouTube video, because what she has is hers and the Lord's. And so I could preach a sermon on this. I feel
I know,
so
but
passionate about it.
genuine. And I've seen Shealeen stuff on Anthropology. Have I not?
Urban Outfitters.
Urban
But
Outfitters.
sister
They're
company.
related.
Power
So
Sister
that's,
company. Yeah.
Yes, I remember
So,
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, she's at home pursuing her passion, which is cathartic, and she feels like she's in therapy.
I know.
So it's feeding her anyway, right?
Exactly.
And then God just blesses it.
Yes.
And he says, you know, I'm just going to bless you because you're just pursuing the art. God's a creator. He made you to create.
Yeah.
And so then you're out there doing that. And I love, you know, I really kind of have a soapbox about this. Christians should be the most creative people out there.
Yes.
Our art, our music, our writing.
'Cause we have the
our-
Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And so I would want to emancipate,
Yeah.
you know, women everywhere, because you are never more like God than when you are working in your gifting, your calling, your passion, and it can be
100%
art,
agreed.
it can be words, it can be making jewelry, whatever it is.
And you can provide for your home in that way.
Yes.
And there's no shame in providing for your home as a woman. It's a beautiful thing. And I always hear that quote, like, entrepreneurs work 80-hour weeks so they don't have to work 40-hour weeks at a 9 to 5 in an office. And I think that's so true. It doesn't, and I'm sure you would agree, Shealeen, that it doesn't feel like work. Like, I could stay up until 1 a.m. and I love it. I'm like, oh, I'm tired, but I love it.
I know. I try not to.
I know.
I do try to, like, because for me, I think working from home, I try to be.
Boundaries.
It's hard though, because when you love it, I totally understand. Like, it doesn't feel like work. You could wake me up at 2 a.m. and be like, "Hey, Shealeen, do you want to go paint for a while?" I'm like, yes. But yeah, so I try and have some
Create those
boundaries.
boundaries.
Well, and I guarantee Jesse and Dan don't ever go, really, it's such a bummer you guys do this and bring an income to our
Oh, no.
home.
No.
This is, oh man, I wish you girls would just, really? No, they're so
Yeah.
thrilled.
They love it.
Well, it's interesting because that's one thing Jesse says a lot. We always ask all these like crazy questions, like not crazy, but how can I serve you better? How can I love you better? What are 3 things that you love about me this month or that I've done that just encouraged your heart? And his answer is almost always to one of those questions is, I just love that you chase after what you love and what you believe in, and that you have that drive. And that's something for me, I feel 1000% with just kind of an achiever perspective can be a huge downfall, because it can suck me in and it can become all consuming, and fear of man ties into that. And it's something I'm very hard on myself about. But to see through his lens of, I really admire and respect that you'll grind until the end to get to where you feel God has called you to be.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Dan says the same thing. That's very inspiring to him that I've created a business, and he's actually started his own business in the last year. And so he's real passionate
What
about
is
it
he
too.
He's doing jewelry?
He does jewelry,
Oh,
yeah. And
cool.
he's like totally getting after it and killing it. And I'm so proud of him. But yeah, we both love to talk business and strategies. And
Does it bond your relationship a lot?
totally. Well, like when we're driving, it's like, want to listen to a business podcast? So yeah, it's really fun.
So Skip
That's
and
so
I
cool.
experienced, and now I'm feeling like I want to be in the club.
Yes, be
But
in the
Skip
you
and I
are.
experienced that in the sense that we both work with words and write and teach. And so we have that joy zone of, honey, I was thinking about blah, 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 blah. And, you know, the way we might parse a passage, or, you know, we're women's ministry in October is going to be doing this thing, Chasing Vultures. And it comes from Abraham and the covenant. And so there's 3 covenant passages for Abraham, Genesis 12, 15, and 17. And in 15, he's reaffirming this covenant. And chapter 12, he had said, oh, Abraham, I'm going to make you great, and you're going to have all this property, and go from Ur of the Chaldees. 10 years later is when God says, hey, I'm going to do that. And Abraham goes, how will I know? Like, it's been 10 years. And so, you know, people out there, from when Shealeen started doing her art, and I watched her, has it been 6, 8 years?
ish, maybe
Yeah,
5. I think I would
maybe
say
5.
5 years. Yeah.
So don't expect it's going to happen next week.
No.
Like
Yeah.
I made
No.
my first piece of art. Okay, where's my audience? Why aren't people?
Takes
Why
years.
aren't I at Anthropology or
Yeah.
Urban Outfitters?
Yeah.
And so, just looking at that text. And so it was actually me listening to Skip teaching on Abraham when I got this idea. And Abraham's waiting for this covenant, and God tells him to cut these animals in two, and then he's going to come meet him. In the Old Testament, a covenant means to cut. And it means we're making a pact. We're making an agreement. This is official. Like, I have a contract with you. And so I was listening to Skip, and while God was delaying, so to speak, for Abraham to come, vultures come and start eating away his sacrifice, eating away the very promise he thinks he's going to make with God. And I was like, oh man, someday I'm going to do a series on chasing vultures, and I'm going to name the things doubt and delay and dismay and darkness that eat away at the promises of God while we're waiting. And so when Skip was done, I said, honey, I think I have a series for you. And he goes, no, I think that's a series for you.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so all
That
I'm
is so
saying, just
cool.
like Dan or Jesse, Skip's like, that's my favorite name of any series you've ever done is Chasing Vultures.
Well, and I do love that with you and Skip, Lenya. I think it just the same, it seems similar with all of our marriages, is just supporting one another. Like Skip is always there during the women's things.
Yes.
I remember seeing him one of the first times just on his bike. His back was horrible. He still rode his bike all the way to the women's event just to hear Lenya. And he's in the back, the only man there. He supports, and you are always supporting him, uplifting him, giving him ideas, encouraging, and just having that bond. I guess I would just encourage our listeners, because it's something that's so impactful for my marriage and in marriages around me, is just to support one another.
Yeah.
To support, to not make passive aggressive comments if they're working too late. Of course, boundaries, right? Everything
Sure.
in moderation.
Sure.
But also being a part of that. Like, I'll run into Jesse's office with a whiteboard marker, and I'm like, I just had this idea. It's 1 a.m. Let me just show you everything. My mind, I swear, works best at night. But I'm like, let me show you everything, all these ideas. And sometimes he just will be like, okay, another one. Like, that's awesome.
Then he just gives you like,
Yeah, good
thumbs
job,
up, babe.
But he really will. Even if he's like, all right, this is outlandish, maybe it's not going to work, he'll still he'll stop everything he's doing and ask questions. All right, so what's your next step then? What do you think? And he'll challenge my mindset, but he supports it. And I would say there really are I love that you use the word joy zone or words, because I feel like that is it, is when you feel supported by one another and you uplift one another and call one another up. What a strong marriage, if it's God-centered, of the purpose. This isn't selfish.
Yep.
This is to honor the Lord, to honor my husband, to provide for my family. Proverbs 31 woman, like, you're pursuing something that has been gifted to you, and what a gift that is.
So, ladies, stop being intimidated by the Proverbs 31. Be her, embrace her.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay to kind of do that. And then I was also thinking about the marriage thing, that passage in scripture that says one will chase their thousands, two their tens of thousands.
Yeah.
If you see your spouse as your partner, and whatever they do and you do, you're partnering together in it. You're only going to go further if you embrace it and each other and, kind of propel each other down that path.
Yeah.
So
how do you and Dan work through, since you both have businesses, when, say, you're both just really, really busy and you have a lot of demand? How do you work through that in your relationship to keep things healthy?
Gosh, he's honestly, he's been so supportive. I mean, this last year I had a few moments that were, I remember I was working on a project that was, it was over, I had to finish it over a weekend. So I was working probably like 18 hours each day. And I remember one morning I got up at like 4 to get started on it. And I remember I accidentally spilled my coffee on my rug. Oh. And I remember he came in, and I'm literally like, I cry a lot. I cry very easily when I'm stressed, but I was like on the floor, sopping up coffee, just like crying. Oh. And he came in and he's like, it's okay. Like, just like rubbing my back. He's like, how can I support you? Like, what do you need right now? So I think that's kind of, I would say that's kind of it. Just being there, being aware and paying attention. Cause I think sometimes, and you probably can understand this, but like I'm driven, I'm really focused on my business. And sometimes I do find that I'm more I can be kind of selfish and just thinking about my own business more so. And I'm like, oh, this is the time for me to not talk about this and talk about what he's thinking about and things that he's struggling with. And so I think it takes a little bit of, self-awareness and I have to kind of
Yeah.
hold myself back a little bit. It's like we're both pursuing things and we both need each other. We both need each other's support.
That's really good.
So,
Well, I want to switch gears a little bit. And this is something that it really resonated with me, Shealeen. I saw there was kind of a dumpster fire on a business page. Friends of ours, you spoke up for them. And I'm looking through and I see all these hate comments. And then I see Shealeen speaking up, standing up, who has a business to protect. You have a business to protect, and yet you still stood up for your friends. And so I guess I want to talk a little bit about being firm. And I know you say you're not totally sure how you feel about standing up and being bold, but you are in your own way. And maybe you have that more than you think you do.
maybe.
But what in those moments when we believe in something, when you believe in something, Shealeen, and you feel like, no, I love these people who are being attacked on social media, I'm going to speak up for them. What is that in you? How do you push back that fear of the attack, the fear of the haters and the cancel culture?
Let me give you a definition while you think, because I'm glad you put cancel culture in there. And it really is a horrific thing. It's almost counter prejudiced.
Yeah.
And so cancel culture, I'm reading in a dictionary now, refers to the popular practice of withdrawing support for or canceling public figures or companies after they've done something or said something that you find objectionable or offensive.
It's anti-gospel. I think it's against the heart of Christ. But
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to like measure my words here. I feel my heart rate rising and I just feel like tears stinging my eyes because it was such a hard thing to witness. People you love being dragged through the mud. It was so much worse than it probably even sounds, just the way we set it up. And obviously I want to protect their privacy and stuff. But I was with these friends when they were receiving death threats against their kids, threats to burn down their business. And when you look in someone's eyes when they're experiencing that kind of distress, I don't think it takes courage. It just takes loving them.
Humanity.
And humanity, having a heart. It's just, that was so wrong. It's so wrong to see the way people are treating one another on social media. And I'm generally somebody who I don't like to jump into arguments. I'm not argumentative. I'm a peacemaker. I don't like arguments. I don't ever jump in on anything. But that was one moment in my life where I was just like, I'm not even thinking, I'm just doing it. It just, when you love people, it makes a huge difference, right?
Well, and what we're talking about is either you have a difference of opinion about some social issue, you may have a different opinion politically, you may just, look at a worldview differently, and all of a sudden that becomes a dividing line.
Yeah.
And it's really ugly. I've been following Carlos Whitaker,
Yeah.
and he was that kill the spider guy.
Yeah.
And I really like him. He has a post that says, you don't have the corner on the outrage market.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hard part with this situation too, just so you guys understand, it's basically a business where they're being attacked for not speaking up about something when they hadn't even had the opportunity to speak up yet before the attack started coming ultimately. And
it wasn't just one business. It tumbled into
there were
4.
multiple businesses.
Yeah.
And it's so sad because, like you're saying, when you sit down with those people and you see the heart of, and they're trying to navigate this mess. And I think that's just the problem is we're so quick to keyboard attack instead of stepping back and realizing they have families. They haven't even really said anything. I don't know them personally. And most of the attacks were coming from people who had never met them,
know them,
knew nothing.
I'd say 99% of the people didn't know them.
We're from out of state even, And the one comment I did write, a lot of them had responses to me that were so angry. And that's when I wanted to get into the battle of it. And that's where it was just like, you know what? It's pearls before swine at this point. There's really so little you can say to change somebody's mind when they've already decided how they feel.
So when I spoke up a couple of times, I did get some comments back, which I'm not going to compare what I went through, of course.
With what
But I actually, as I started looking at them a little bit, I decided I wasn't going to read them because I really value people's input about who I am, people I love, people I trust. I want them to speak into my life. people who don't know me do not have a right to tell me who I am, what I am.
good.
So I didn't read any of those comments because I wasn't telling those people who they were. I was sticking up for my friends. And so I didn't read any of those comments.
It's just so quick to judge, especially on a social media platform. And it's a monolithic point of view of a human being. You're only seeing what's posted. You don't see, I see into your life. I know you. I know what you and Dan are like. I know. And I've witnessed, I'm like, who gives you the right to come in with that? I'm going to go back to Carlos Whitaker here. That comment I said, there's a lot to be outraged about, rightfully so. Breonna Taylor was killed and true accountability seems like a facade. 2 Los Angeles sheriffs were ambushed by a crowd, criminal and fighting for their lives. Digital streaming services, all of them are putting out more and more disgusting content. Political parties are politicizing a virus that doesn't care who you vote for. There's a lot. And you will become passionate about a certain issue. And I applaud that. But what you can't do is weaponize your outrage against someone else's outrage. This isn't a competition. God will place individual passions on your heart, and the purpose of that isn't to judge someone else's passion, but rather to propel you to do something about what has come alive in your heart. Nobody has been accusing people who started orgs to fight human trafficking for not caring about Black lives. Nobody has been accusing people who have been working for years with Black children in urban contexts of not caring about the lives of police officers. No, nobody does that until now. Just because someone has a passion to see justice done in one area doesn't mean they have to speak into all areas of justice. Can you imagine someone asking Mother Teresa, but what about the crime that the poor people you serve are committing? What about those victims? You are such a hypocrite, Mother Teresa. That's ridiculous, right? Of course it is. So stop doing it now. This isn't a game. It isn't a contest. Be passionate about what you are passionate about, but stop wasting energy judging others for not sharing the same passion and instead use the energy to make another dent in the injustice you are fighting.
Wow.
It's the better way.
That's so good.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Well, because it is like, think about the amount of time spent arguing over things, whether it's on social media or in person, rather than, okay, what if I spent that 30 minutes to an hour that attacking people's character that I don't even know, putting that into an actual cause and really investing, whether it's my time, talents, treasures, whatever it is, actually pushing forward what I do believe in instead of attacking everyone for not believing in what I believe in. It really is. It's just a vicious cycle that's not going to go anywhere.
I think
so
talk
unproductive.
is cheap.
Yeah.
And actions speak.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people want to just sit there and type things and spew these words, but get out there. You know, you do something about it.
Yeah.
I don't really want to hear your rhetoric. I want to see the way you live and what you're doing about the situation.
Yeah.
And so it's just wearisome.
I agree. And I think that it's so easy to look at these other people and kind of point the finger. And I just like, think about like what Jesus said, like, look at yourself, like look at the plank in your own eye.
Yes.
And why is it so hard for us to just like, okay, I'm going to call out myself here. I want to look at myself and just see if there's, you know, these hidden faults in me, these hidden sins, you know, like these things I'm not even aware of. But what is it about human nature that it's just so much easier to point and to accuse others and demonize others?
Yes.
It's very sad. I feel like I saw some of the worst
Inhumanity.
that can come out of humanity. And it was really interesting to me that it was all kind of brought about through the vehicle of social media.
Yep.
And it's alarming to me. Like Dan and I just watched The Social Dilemma last night. I don't know if you guys have
heard
seen
of that.
that.
I haven't seen it yet.
Writing it down.
Oh gosh, you guys, it is enlightening and challenging. And it was hard to watch. Dan and I both were like, okay, this is the most difficult thing I've ever watched because we are so guilty of, first of all, just being addicted to technology in our phones. But it was just talking about how you are just able to demonize and dehumanize other people. Man, I really highly recommend it. There was so much to it, and I don't want to just go on a long rabbit trail here, but social media, it's a little bit alarming to me.
Yeah, it is. It's new. Not
It's new.
It's
It
not
is.
brand
Yeah,
new,
it
but
is.
We haven't gone through all the moral, ethical
Yes.
sides where you're having philosophers debate, and you haven't put it in a spot that you understand, the ramifications and the unintended consequences and the collateral damage
Yeah.
that is done. And there really needs to be a lot more dialogue,
I
right?
know.
If we could just talk it out loud and say, okay, did you know when this happens, was your intended consequence to shut that business down and to make a whole family now, be
Traumatized?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, was that the moral justice you were looking for? And so,
Yeah.
I don't know, think before you speak, right? Someone said to me once, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We should listen twice as much as we talk.
My husband, he's so good about being quiet. No, I shouldn't say it like that. But he, we were talking about it yesterday. We were talking about like in Proverbs, man, there's just like so many verses like life and death are in the power of the tongue, and
right.
you'll eat the fruit of it. Even a fool seems wise if he keeps his mouth shut.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of wisdom in just being like, okay, I'm going to think before I speak here. And I think in social media, we're seeing so much emotionally triggering things and just share this, passionate about this. And I think that if we were just to kind of slow down and think before we, repost, which is, I guess, the same analogy of speaking in my mind.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You said we need to have coffee because Jesse's the same. We're like those entrepreneurs, but Jesse's very much, he sits and he listens. And I admire that so much in him because sometimes he'll be listening to something. I'm like, oh, I can't hear any more about this topic. I just want to shut off. I can't listen to politics anymore. And for him, it's like, I just want to be informed on all ends. And he's never afraid. I feel he guards his heart well, which is important. Scripture calls us to guard our hearts. But I think he also is not afraid to dive into the really hard questions. And there was actually Matthew West just did a podcast where he interviewed somebody who had fallen away from the faith, a good friend. And he was just asking him questions. Why? And there were so many attacks on that post from people who hadn't even listened to the episode yet. And just said, oh, you're not protecting our faith. You're not guarding our heart. And his responses were always if you know anything about my ministry, I've had the opportunity to speak with him and he is as genuine as they come. And he just said, if you know anything about my ministry, my goal has always been to point people back to faith. This is just a conversation with a pastor's kid that I thought was necessary to have. And I think we maybe as Christians can sometimes have the tendency to close our ears to things that scare us and to turn away from things that may not fit our agenda.
That's right.
Even with the political party, like my husband, he has his views. We have our values, our beliefs, but he will listen all day to different opponents to hear their perspective and to listen so that he has a well-rounded view. I do not believe that the Lord wants us to be closed-minded and to keep our eyes on one thing only and to not have the ability. Scripture calls us to be able to defend our faith, to defend our beliefs, to make a case for those things. And so how can we do so if we're not willing to listen to other things? Yes, guard your heart. Yes, know where your struggles are, what your stumbling blocks are. But also at the same time, I think there's so much to be said for just listening. And my husband won't share his opinion a lot on where
Skip
he's
doesn't
at.
either
That's
unless
Dan.
you really ask him or
Yeah.
you have to really get
Dig
him down.
in.
Christians, that's called apologetics. If we have the truth, if we really believe the truth is on our side, the word is truth and Jesus is the way, the truth. I mean, we believe truth is on our side.
Yeah.
Why would we be afraid to listen to the lies?
Exactly.
Number one. And number two, if we don't listen to them, how do we respond to them?
Yeah.
Right.
If we don't know articulately what's happening, how do we come back with a reasoned response? And that's what apologetics is listening to something and then coming back. And I just wanted to go back to the tongue thing. Even so, the tongue is a little member and it boasts great things. See how great a forest a little fire kindles. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defies the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature. It is set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird or reptile, creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. And I would just want to caution people, your words are poison. They're defiling. They are worse than COVID. They are infectious. And you can send this infection. You know, we talk about racism, and it is infectious, and it is an ugly disease, and it's cancer, and it does need to be cut out. But so are your words. If you're not careful with them, they are contagious, and the next person is going to get it, and the next person, and the next person. And before you know, we're seeing the wildfires on the West Coast, right? It's just burning down. You know, and one stupid couple had a gender reveal party with pyrotechnics, and it sets a forest on fire. And so just be careful. Your words can ignite things and have untold consequences. And so, you know, just be careful.
Yeah.
Be careful.
I love that verse. I think of it as when we speak to someone, when we're in a conversation with a coworker, when we're in a conversation with someone we disagree with, or with a spouse, just to constantly evaluate ourselves, like you were talking about, Shealeen, going back to examine our own hearts. The greatest growth that we have is when we're willing to sit back and allow the Lord to sift through our thoughts, our hearts, through his word, and to say, what's going on in me before I outrage at the world, before I pour out. And so just evaluating my words, examining them by the standard of, am I breathing life right now?
Yes.
Or am I spitting poison? Because the poison, as Lenya is saying, it lasts.
It's an accelerant.
And it affects us. It affects, just like bitterness or unforgiveness, it affects us. That negativity, that anger affects us probably far more than even the people that we're pouring it out on. But they are also feeling the effects, like Lenya is saying. So just being aware. So in closing, I guess, Shealeen, I'll ask you, I really love your solidarity. I feel like you're very solid in who you are. And I admire that and love that. And so I would just ask, how does your faith impact the way that you live with this certainty in your business, in your marriage, and saying Poema is done even at its highest peak? Yeah. How does Jesus impact that? And how do you encourage others to live the same way?
Big question. Man, I do feel like, it's been an interesting 10 years. I've gone through some serious seasons of doubting and feeling so uncertain about things that were going on. But I feel like the Lord just gave me these incredible moments and these little, I guess, rocks or anchors, whatever you want to call them, that I've just held onto and clung to. And he's just brought me through it. I mean, this season, even just right now, everything going on in the world, everybody keeps using the term uncertainty, these unprecedented, uncertain times. Unprecedented. But I have the Lord, and he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he's just that anchor for my soul. And, you know, when the world feels uncertain, I know I have him. Yeah. So, I think it's just trying to abide in him and just let the chips fall where they may. Sometimes I don't know how I should best be representing Jesus to everybody and using my platform and sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to stay close to him and trust that as I abide in him, that's going to shine through just in who I am as a person. And I try not to put pressure on myself to
that's good. Jesus is a rock. He's a good place to stand. The other thing is grace toward others. You know, when you say unprecedented times, and
so sick of it.
We lived through a civil war.
World wars.
I know. We've lived through some pretty tough stuff. So it's not as unprecedented as we think. That was what's so good about Paul Clark's podcast is like, oh, this is just cycling through. I've seen this before. But just give grace. And the idea that people are evolving. We aren't static beings. Yes. I am not the girl I was a college co-ed in college. You know, I am not the newlywed I was when I married Skip. I'm still not even the person of a mother of toddlers. I have continued to evolve as a human being, or as scripture would say, maybe I'm being transformed, you know, from glory to glory. It's sanctification. But I'm changing. I'm not a static being. I may have been more ignorant in the past. And so to cast me in that forever is not fair. To cast me as an ignorant, puritanical, whatever it is, it's just not fair to paint with those brushes. So let's have grace.
Yes.
Let's let people evolve and change and grow. And, you know, I am not my worst decisions. I am someone who's learned from some of my worst decisions, and those things have propelled me to, again, repent and to change and to be changed from glory to glory. And if you just would look at each other as a work in progress, that's just so much more tender and give people learning opportunities. And if we continue to put incendiary devices and blow people up for a comment that they have made, instead of coming back with a reason, a kind word turns away wrath. We can turn the other cheek. There are so many other ways we can respond, and that can be a growth experience for another human being.
Yeah.
And could we just give people a chance for that? Let's give each other just a monicum of respect and grace. And
I appreciate that. And it made me think of Psalm 23, just as we approach the election and as we continue working through COVID. I mean, if I'm honest, I have moments where I'm like, I just want to go to a movie theater. I just want to take my kids to Chuck E. Cheese. Like I feel like I'm the type of personality where I see an issue and I say, I'm going to overcome this. Like by the grace of God, we're going to fight through this. But there are moments when you can't see the light as much and you feel like, what is coming? Like what's coming of the world, that it can be really intimidating. But it does give me a sense of relief, I would say, like speaking with you and Paul Clark Lenya about the 70s and how it all looked very similar now, and we had wars and we had the Spanish flu and all of those things. But as we approach this season, whatever may come, that we may have the heart of Christ, but that also we reflect back on Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, which it may feel like for many right now, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And then going on to say, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Are we allowing that to guide our hearts? Are we allowing that to guide our perspective and our lives right now when we are getting on that computer or when we are about to have that with a crazy uncle conversation? Are we sitting and resting in that truth that he leads us by still waters and that he is our shepherd? He's leading us through all of this. That gives us a sense of peace. That gives us the opportunity to close our mouths a little bit more and to listen a little bit more and to just rest in the truth that he has guided, will guide, has never failed you before, will not fail you, and he guides the path. And I think just living in that, for me, it's like, it's just a breath of fresh air right now. Shealeen, I just want to thank you so much for being a part today, for sharing your calm and your wisdom with us.
It was so
it is
fun.
So nice.
I don't want to stop.
I know. I'm like,
it's like we need to go get coffee and just, we'll solve world peace. Yeah. I know we can do it.
Amen. And for our listeners, you can find free printable coloring pages and paintings to download as your phone lock screen at ShealeenLouise.com/free. And that's SheaLeenLouise. And then you can also visit her website at www.ShealeenLouise.com. On Instagram, go and see her beautiful watercolor art. It will just like bring peace to your soul as we're talking about peace.
How do they buy your art? Can they buy it from the Instagram, from your
my website? Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And then you can also find her on YouTube at Shealeen Louise.
Too many places, huh?
No way.
That's so many portals.
I know.
But so many people, they use, like, there are people who will not listen to podcasts, but they'll watch YouTube.
I know.
So it's good to be in all the places.
Yes.
But thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Of course. And we'll talk to you all next Tuesday. Bye. For behind the scenes videos and photos, as well as info about our upcoming guests, follow along with us on Instagram at allthethings.podcast. You can keep up with Lenya at Lenya Heitzig and Lindsey at Lindsey.Maestas. If you'd like to listen to past episodes or learn more about us, visit the allthethingspodcast.com.